So the thing I actually won't speak about is hardware and software. Because I think in 10 minutes you can't go through all the attributes of cloud. We've heard from analyst views this morning, from vendors' views, and all sort of sites into what we term to be the cloud project. So in 10 minutes what I decided to do is just cover one particular topic. And that topic is, what is in your mind when you actually approach a cloud project? And from the last couple of years, every conversation I have with a company basically eventually comes back to the cloud topic and wanting to move in that direction. So the presentation is mostly just on one. How do you see that project and how do you mentally approach it to actually get success out of it? Because of all the projects we've run, we've had successes, we've had failures in terms of customer implementations. And there's an attribute that goes with the successful ones that just seem to be common among all the ones that actually succeeded. And it's actually quite simple. What is this? If you walk around your garden and you see this lying in your garden, what is the first thing you think? An old broken down wheelbarrow. What can you do with it? What should be done with it? And it's quite simple. Most people immediately think it's something I need to remove from my garden, it's unsightly, it needs to go to the junkyard, throw it away. But there's an alternate view, which is actually the view of most of the failures within cloud deployments at the moment. And that is the view that you would have if you were 10, 11, 12 years old and you saw that lying in a garden. When you're around that age, and mostly male, you walk around the garden, you see that wheelbarrow lying there. There's only one thing you think of. That. Wheelbarrow, wheel, build a car. And that's the way we approach a lot of the cloud projects at the moment, from a technology perspective. We see a single piece of technology that has got certain attributes that are deployable, and we think, there we go. This is the start of our cloud project, off we go. If you think in reality from that single wheel on a wheelbarrow, the best you can ever aim to achieve is probably something like that. If you're really, really good, you've got to reach farther and he can give you some other components to build this go-kart with. You might be able to achieve this. But through this whole process, you'll always pretend that this is what you've actually built. No matter what comes out from that single wheelbarrow wheel, this is what you'll pretend, this is what you'll tell all your friends as you go up and down the road in your go-kart, that you've actually achieved. You've got the fastest, most beautiful race vehicle ever in the world. So is that single technology component really the right place to start when you look at a cloud deployment? And as I said, unfortunately, at the moment, it seems to be the predominant thing people start with when they look at cloud-based projects. And for most of those deployments, the thing they end up with is exactly that first go-kart you saw that has got a few pieces sort of fit together to make it look like a car, and in the end pretend that it's actually a racing car and the fastest racing car that you can find within the industry at the moment. And that comes from the fact that most of these are driven by technology components. Technology components from vendors that live right at the bottom end of the stack and has maybe got a server virtualization solution, or vendors that have got a certain software solution. And going through, as I said, the successful ones, that is exactly what we've determined is not the right direction to take these projects in. And to reiterate the fact, if you go and buy yourself some form of a transport vehicle, do you start off with a single component in that vehicle and say, you really like that connecting rod within the engine? Therefore, that's where I'm going to start my car, and I'm going to build a car around it that I can actually use for a certain purpose. No, for most purposes, we don't. For most purposes, we start as adults on the opposite end of that scale. We start off with the service requirement. What do I want to do with that vehicle, with that transport vehicle that I want to buy? Am I a construction worker? Do I work for the fire brigade? Am I a helicopter pilot that does search and rescue? And that service requirement is what we use to define the attributes of what we need to get to actually get us to do or to supply the service that we need to supply. If you're into construction or excavation, you'll get a big truck. If you're in the fire brigade, you'll get a fire engine. If you're in search and rescue, you'll get a helicopter. And that's exactly the way that we see cloud computing deployments. Starting from that side for successful deployments, rather than starting from the technology side. I know you might find it quite strange that that recommendation comes from a vendor that basically makes a living out of technology components. But we also make a living out of successful deployments within our customers. Successful deployments grow. With growth, there's additional requirement. With additional requirement, that is where our business is. So we subscribe to the standard cloud models that you find out there. But we believe that it does not build up out of those single components, that for a successful cloud deployment, you do not necessarily have to build small little layers on top of each other to get to the service that you want to deploy. In some cases, you do. In the previous sessions before lunch, we heard from people like Qatar University. Their requirement is quite basic. What way they need to deliver as a service is really just virtual images. So yes, that's a very technical solution, a very low-down solution in the stack. But the service they need to provide is that service. Because the higher level services for Qatar University, if I understand the presentation correct me if I'm wrong, the higher level services in Qatar University is undefined. So that is the highest level of common service you can actually provide and still get the efficiencies out of it. Now, if you look at people that live more within the enterprise space, having a deployment like Qatar University within the enterprise space doesn't really have the same value, because there is no big value for an enterprise to just have that layer. The services for an enterprise might be an application-based service, so an HRM, human capital management service, or a financial service. And that is really the place to start and work down towards the bottom to get the most efficient deployment, rather than start at the bottom and build up towards those services. And that's exactly why, from Oracle's side, we've got a unique position we play within that market. Because currently, if you look at it, we are the only vendor that actually have every last component of the stack from the bottom to the top to be able to satisfy the service level demand at the level that that service within a cloud-based infrastructure is needed. And something else we disagree with that I actually heard earlier is that to move to a cloud-based architecture, what you should do is basically put all your applications on hold that you currently have and go develop new ones in the cloud. I cannot see how any large organization can make that decision to be as disruptive as just stopping everything that you're doing and developing new applications in the cloud. That's exactly why, for us, it is actually a process, a methodology that moves towards cloud. Certain of those services can jump all of the steps and actually move straight into a cloud-based environment. Other services for us are things that go through stages to move in the direction of a cloud. And as I say, as we have the whole stack of technology components, we can actually move through that whole era. And the road we see for that at the moment is actually very simple in 3 categories. One is what you find at the moment in most companies, where 46 seconds left. Have to talk faster. So what we see in most companies is taking disparate components from multiple vendors, gluing them together, and then actually getting to a cloud solution, inheriting all the integration issues that go with it. The next one is a best practice approach, and the last one that there'll actually be a separate session on after the break is the whole stack as a cloud. And the main aim we move with this progression is to get to what this slide actually describes. To remove every last portion in terms of integration, in terms of all the things that you do that are non-core to providing that service. So taking a set of servers, gluing them together in your environment with a set of storage, gluing them together with a networking infrastructure, none of that has provided any value for you. Putting an operating system on it still hasn't provided a value. Putting virtualization underneath it still hasn't necessarily provided a value. Getting to the end service that you want to deliver is what provides the value. And that's exactly where we aim to move in the cloud environment. And we have examples of this already. As I said, after the break, there'll actually be a presentation on an example of this particular technology. Is getting to the stage where, depending on the service you need, you actually just deploy a full infrastructure that gives that service within the company. So just to close off, because I think my time is finished. Just to close off, for me, the most important thing is how you view the cloud project when you start. Do you view it as one of the technology stack components that you are building out from? And as I said, most of those deployments that I've seen actually never get to the value that you wanted to get to. Or do you start from the service requirement that will make the biggest impact in your business or the biggest impact in your environment, and then build down and make sure that all the technology components you provide actually gives you the value that delivers to that service side? And I'll leave the other 45 slides for another occasion. Thank you very much.